There's only one caveat that could be taken away from an RFK campaign. Now, look, folks, I'm voted third party. You can do whatever you want. I understand that there are RFK supporters in my audience and even here or wherever. But the one caveat that could be taken away is that, unlike Trump, RFK has been saying some very interesting things, calling out the corruption as well as neoliberalism, not to the extent I would like to see it to go further, but to do so to where there is broad appeal. But again, this is not a general election. This is a primary, as, again, everyone here has brought up. So it could potentially be used as further political power for people like us who want to tell people to break away from the two-party system. Like, hey, look, here's RFK Jr. He's getting away with and saying things that Bernie Sanders would never have the balls to say, but he's running in a Democratic Party, so everyone don't pretend to be shocked when the DNC finally screws him over, which is what they are going to do. They haven't done it yet, but they're probably waiting in wings just to do so, because let's face it, all the news surrounding Joe Biden, his approval rating, it is absolutely devastating, and they need to do everything they can. What the Democrats are going to do is everything they can to try and shine up Joe Biden and make him look like something that he is not. So what we could take away from an RFK campaign is that people on the left, right, the center are all coming to terms like, okay, wait a minute, RFK is a little more coherent than Trump and is actually saying things about the system that I agree with, that it's screwed up, that it's murdering us, that it's keeping us further and further in debt. That's the one thing we could take away. But what I'm concerned about is that you're going to still see people fall in love with a political candidate and think that their candidate can go all the way. But again, when you run in a Democratic primary, they've already admitted that they're going to rig the system. It's like going to a casino. The house always wins, folks, and the DNC wants to win all the time. I'm so sorry, RFK and Marianne Williamson supporters. I understand it, and if that's what you want to do, fine. But just don't be disappointed when they tell you to vote Joe Biden, okay?
At least RFK is going to be interesting to watch, because I have nothing but strategic disagreements with RFK. And that's what I've been criticizing. I've seen some people who are impressed with RFK as well. That's like, man, Nick, why can't you guys get behind him? Why can't you just vote for him, man? Do something. Like, I with the platform I have, I cannot be irresponsible.
Exactly.
I do not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I will be 100% clear with you guys. When I hear RFK speak about pardoning Julian Assange, when I hear him calling out the Ukraine war, those are great headlines for us to get. That's why I trash Marianne Williamson, because what Marianne Williamson is doing, she generated the same headline AOC generating. Different. Medicare for all, living wage, economic freedom. Like, every Democrat runs on that. What's the difference between you and the person that is currently in charge of the executive branch? So at least RFK bringing up interesting stuff, but I cannot be irresponsible. I cannot lie to you guys. I have zero hope. And this is how I legitimately feel after being part of the system, in a way, being part of the Bernie campaign. Watching this, I vote green. Like, this system is rigged. I cannot, in good faith or conscience, tell you guys this is going to be successful.
Exactly.
That's the reality. But go ahead, Kev. Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, yeah. Here's our social responsibility as commentators, as reporters, as people in independent media. Look, we've been through this rodeo not once but twice. This is our third time now going through another presidential election cycle, and I understand where people come from with, they say, "Hey, I want to vote Democrat or Republican." I get it. But I am not going to sit here on my platform or on anyone else's show and sell you something that we know will never come into fruition. There are so many hoops that RFK Jr. has to go through in order for him to win the nomination. He might as well be floating through a tunnel. That's how many hoops that he has to go through. And the thing is, we know this isn't up for a debate. We know the DNC commits election fraud. Yeah. There's been evidence so many times. All of you, we've lost count how many times we talk about how the Democrats commit election fraud. And again, I'm going to say this again, just to trigger the vote blue, no matter who people. But Donald Trump was more democratically elected in the Republican 2016 primary than Hillary Clinton was, because a Republican primary doesn't have super delegates. And that's, again, what anybody who's running for president in Democratic primary has to come to terms with. You're not going to win. You're going to lose. Simple.
But what they really have to come to terms with is that the voters suck ass. and that the voters are not going to go for them.
It's not. Like, it's never going to come to having.
It's not going to come to the DNC and rigging and election fraud and this and that. Like that, I feel like that is a point that's worth emphasizing, but I feel like that has been overemphasized at the expense of the more important point, which is the population of people who is voting in Democratic primaries are stupid and shallow and self-interested, and they will never go for RFK in significant numbers for him to win anyway, regardless of what the DNC has plans to do if he gets close to them, right? I think that's really, really important for everybody to understand, because that also affects how you make your arguments, because you have to know who you can make your arguments to and who you can't. So the interesting thing about RFK, there have been a couple of think pieces in various outlets. I think Washington Post ran one. I forget which other outlet, but it was, one of the major ones, comparing his candidacy to Trump's. And so talking about he's running a very Trumpian campaign, touching on some very Trumpian themes. And it is interesting because what I do see in RFK's campaign is sort of the left-wing version of the Steve Bannon platform, the dismantling of the administrative state. That's what Steve Bannon talked about. Right. RFK, in a sense, is talking about that as well. He's not talking about sweeping, broad-based, mass sort of populist reforms like Medicare for all, but he is talking about using the power of the executive to go into these institutions and sort of pick them apart and piece them back together in a way that serves people better. So it's not quite the Bernie platform. It's not mass politics. It's not social democracy. But it is this sort of top-down restructuring of all of these institutions that he feels are very rotted out. That is a version, like I said, that's the more left-wing pro-government version of the Steve Bannon platform, which is burn it all to the ground, right? So there is a darkness, there is a dysfunction in the system that he speaks to, much in the way that Trump spoke to it. And so that is interesting. It's very, very interesting. But it's not of interest to the Democratic base. It's not of interest to the Democratic base. Democratic primary voters are only about 30 million people in a country of 330 million. So it's not a knock on him to say he's going to strike out with Democratic voters. But you do have to understand that when you're talking about these bigger themes and these bigger issues, you are pitching them to an audience that doesn't understand them. Our friend Anis wrote a great article for RFK, and I told him, it's like you wrote Macbeth and you put it on in a theater where the audience only wants to see Oklahoma. They want to see guys in the house. You're putting on high art for an audience that's not capable of absorbing it, and it's important to understand that.
Forget guys and dolls. They want to watch like a TV sitcom. Is what?
Yeah, right. Power Rangers.
I'm gonna read this point for Zoya, and I'll pass it back to the panel. Zoya says DNC lawsuit. Zoya's love. Zoya's life. DNC lawsuit said they are a private corporation with the right to select any candidate they want. I know people got goldfish memories. I remember that. The Dem primaries are a money-making distraction for the proletariat modern coliseum. That's so beautifully properly put by Zoya's love, Zoya's life. And I'm going to show you guys what she means here, because I have long memory, unlike many bourgeoisie liberals that call themselves part of the progressive movement, who want to waste another $100 million on this shit again. I saw this headline, that shit burnt into my brain.
Right.
This shit burnt into my brain. I was on the Bernie campaign. I saw this headline.
Yeah, I remember that.
Man. Look at this. Democratic leaders willing to risk party damage to stop Bernie. Can you imagine when they would do the RFK? They would have lit this whole party on fucking fire before let RFK win. Well, interviews with dozens of Democratic Party officials, including 93 superdelegates, found overwhelming opposition to handling Mr. Sanders' the nomination if he fell short of the majority of delegates. Anyone want to chime in? I just want to make sure I show this headline.
This is a point
free in my head for years. But anyone want to take it from here?
Well, we covered this. When did we last do a show? Yesterday. Man, it's been a long goddamn day. I forgot we even did a show yesterday. We covered last night how there's a centrist PAC called No Labels who is thinking about recruiting Joe Manchin to run as a third party in 2024, which speaks to the point of this. Like, these centrists, where the real money is, right, the actual centers of capital that benefit off of whoever wins, they are more than willing to blow up the Democratic Party if they feel they have to. Right. So if it looks to them that Biden cannot win, they'll say, well, fuck it. If the Democrats are no good to us, we'll just run Joe Manchin on a third-party ticket. Like, the centrists have no illusions about what these parties are. These parties are nothing more than front groups for their money. And so they're willing to burn it all down in a heartbeat if they feel like, oh, shit, this Democrat car won't run anymore. Let's just put Manchin up, run him as a third party. And so there needs to be that same sort of Machiavellian streak for any sort of populist or left movement that wants to sort of infiltrate the system. We have to have the killer instinct to say we're willing to do that too.
You know, when we look at the fact that the Democratic Party was saying all this brazen stuff in 2020, what I find interesting, though, is there is a little bit of a change. Not drastic, though, but again, the evidence is clear, as well as from reports from corporate media. Pretty soon they're going to get the memo to fall in line and circle the wagons around Biden. But everyone has been quietly saying, well, Biden's approval ratings are going down. He's not popular. All that fluff stuff that we did as soon as he got elected into office, it's not sticking to the wall anymore. And we realize that the whole room is filled with crap. I mean, there are subtle hints that's kind of being broadcast. And there's this talk of, again, we still got to support Biden. We still got to do this, but it's not hitting. And I played a video that was posted by Case Study QB where even vote blue no matter who people are saying, he's too old. I don't want to vote for Biden. I'm not enthralled. But now again, Keen brought up the base is stupid. That simple. The base is stupid. But what I find interesting though is that there is the potential, as Russell brought up, that look, the DNC can go full on cannon fire against RFK, but can it really stick? Because RFK is not Bernie. RFK has been saying things that obviously would never be heard in a Democratic primary, or either that was fall out the lips of Bernie Sanders. So it is a gamble if they try and destroy the Democratic Party, because that could be the final kill shot in which voters don't turn up at all. And what I mean by voters, I'm talking about progressives and independents are like, okay, fine, but we won't see you in the general election. It could probably be a lower turnout.
Aren't we already there though?
Well, I mean, yes and no, because again, you still have people who believe in the idea that electoral politics can help. Now, I'm all on board in supporting third parties and citizen ballot initiatives, but I think this could be, and again, this is not the most important election cycle of our lifetime, but this could probably be the turning point election year in which people are like, okay, it doesn't matter who sits in the White House. It doesn't matter who is president. It doesn't matter which political party is in. I'm still broke. I'm still starving in the street. The hell with this. This could be that threshold in which, again, nothing could ever be reset.
Well, yeah, I think we're there. I think you have some people who just cannot imagine going through a presidential election cycle without getting involved with somebody's campaign. They just can't wrap their heads around it, even though it's clearly irrational at this point, given everything we know, the journey most of us been on with the two Bernie campaigns. It makes absolutely no sense to get involved in a Democratic primary. I wrote an article called Dawn of the Dems, where I said presidential campaigns are the shopping mall they're returning to, like the zombies in that movie. They just, somewhere in their brain, they're fixated on it. They remember it's a place they used to go. So they have to keep going there every presidential election cycle. But there's no reason for it at this point. And if you look at how people have been performing in primaries, where the progressive candidate is running, they've all been losing. Because we're not getting involved. We're not supporting them. We're not sending.
Yeah, Nina Turner was an example.
Nina Turner was a great example. When was the last time one of these people announced they're going to be like a new addition to the squad that anybody got behind that in our space? Like nobody even bothers to even talk about it. I don't even know the names of these people. I just read about how they lost. Honestly, like we just don't get involved in these things anymore. So that's what I mean, Kit. Like, that ship has sailed. Like who? Like I said, I'm not kidding. I wrote in Dave Chappelle last time. I'm very likely to write in Dave Chappelle this time.
Just a real quick. I mean, maybe it's just the people I've been speaking to, Russell. Just there are so many people who I've been talking to, friends, colleagues, in real life, and of course online too, where they're maybe like they're still involved in electoral politics, and so maybe that's where my perspective is coming from. Now, of course, we'll find out what the overall turnout will be come the primary and general election. To your point, yeah, you're probably most likely correct that maybe we are there, but I feel that we're not there yet, and this will be the point to where afterwards we will be there. That's what I want to.
Well,
clarify.
well, if what you mean is after they see that RFK was pointless, like what I mean is by we're already there is I don't think a lot of these people will end up doing the well, I gotta vote for Biden. That's what I mean by we're already there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like I don't think a
Simple.
lot of those people are gonna do that once the RFK thing immolates. With Biden, to your point, it was funny with Biden because with Hillary, look, you had people who would walk through fire for Hillary. It was sad and insane, but it was true. I never met a Biden stan. Like not anyone under like 75. I've known a few like really elderly people who felt that Biden was great for the country, but as a rule, the vote blue no matter who people were very cold towards him. Like it's what I have to do. They did it as a duty. They had no passion about it. So now that he's, even further along in his dementia, that's just even more pronounced. Like you're really not, you're not seeing even the vote blue no matter who people. I'm not seeing any of them standing up and saying Biden's great. You're seeing a lot of Trump is terrible. You're not seeing a lot of defense of Joe Biden. I'm not seeing a lot of that. The most they can muster is Biden is a decent man, which is not much of a proposition.
Not compared, Russell, certainly not to 2020 when they were selling it, and it just felt like a better game to sell because we didn't know what was in the package.